Hi, I'm Gary. Can you hear me okay? Can you see me? My vision, it's important to understand how I see the world, literally how I see the world, to understand this story that's going to be told over a number of videos. So I'm developing technology for blind and visually impaired people. I'm visually impaired-ish myself. This video will be mostly audio and transcript because I'm hoping that my blind and visually impaired friends, colleagues, and contacts out there will be able to follow my descriptions of image processing and app development, despite not being able to see images. So I'm going to be explaining cameras, images, and image processing people who can't see. So I've got analogies and examples ready to go. I did that actually last year, but we'll get to those in a later video. So I'm a Gen Xer. So I'm not branding myself, but this is a series of stories about research, invention, engineering, and business. And I hope these stories are going to be helpful to you. I'm really hoping that the people who will be reached by these stories and who are going to understand these stories are students, people who are interested in developing assistive technology, perhaps young engineers, developers, and other people like me who are disabled-ish or in fact have disabilities and who are interested in getting into the business of developing disability tech, as Perkins School for the Blind has defined it, or as it has been known for a while, assistive tech. So when you have a disability or impairment yourself, you understand better what's going to work for you. I'll get to my impairment in a later video and explain how it's relevant to all this. It goes back to early childhood, and that's how long I've been working on this stuff, basically since I was 3. Okay, so the first story for context. So I'm going to provide context for this whole video series. And it's the development of my company's first app. My company is called Echobatics. The app is called Echobatics. It's in the App Store. Now, this is a long monologue in many parts. Maybe too much information, but I want to make clear how you, as one of these people I described, could have a fulfilling career addressing 3 things: what you're good at, what you can make money doing, and what hobbies or interests you have. You take those 3 things and you look at the overlap, and I'm happy to discuss this with you because I love doing this. You look at the overlap of what you're good at, what you can make money doing, what hobbies or interests you have. At that intersection, there are a very small number of people probably doing that thing. You could become a known person. You could develop your brand or whatever you want to call it, doing that thing. You can have that kind of career. I really enjoy what I do for a lot of reasons. Family history, where I grew up, my vision, all those sorts of things. So, and I'm doing this video in one take. This is a monologue, but I hope it'll become a dialogue, a conversation with those of you who are willing to watch most or all of this series. And hey, Ricky, I'll generate the captions and upload the transcript screen. We're just going to go ahead. I'm going to generate the captions. Also, I'm reading from a script. I'm sorry, Martin. I got to do this first one by script because I got to get it out and move on to the next videos. Okay, I will generate the captions, which you're going to see down here, and I will upload the transcript soon. Thanks in particular, Ricky Pointer, for your patience. By the way, do caption your videos. Caption your videos. I like to use the service 3Play Media. And Ricky, you know, for you, you are a big part of the reason that I caption my videos. And I'm wearing your shirt. Okay, so I'm telling the story. So here's the story. And I'm going to answer the questions: who, what, where, when, why, and how much. And I'll provide a link at some point where you can read about that kind of thing. These are standard questions, journalistic questions, if you like. But, you know, we can look at journalism. We can look at all these different fields and say, hey, how do they approach this? I'm going to talk about the 5 whys from Toyota in a future video, explaining how to go deep on a problem. First, I'm going to answer the when. In this video, the way I'm going to tell the story is to provide a sort of skeleton structure so that as I refer back to app development, you will understand what happened when, which helps explain how long it takes to develop something, what's involved. In today's story, I'm not going to get too much into the marketing work and trying to decide among Was it 200 different ideas to pursue how we ended up on this particular one for the first product? But I will get into that. So when did research start? When did development start? When did I hit certain milestones in development? So I had a team for the company, and that has changed over time, but I'm the developer for this app. I'm the sole developer for the app that is now in the App Store, the Ecobatics app, and so on. I'm going to go into that. So I'm going to tell the story briefly in this video. More details coming in future videos, including digging into the technology. That's going to come soon. That's probably going to be the most fun and most interesting to you, but I want to put in context. I want to tell a story that maybe you can remember some bits and pieces, or you'll see how it comes together, how many years, actually decades of my life led to this point, why I chose it, and how that can be associated with your interests, what you're good at, what you're studying, what you want to do. So I'm just going to tell you my story. And it works better, I think, as a video than, say, as a book, which I've been thinking about writing for years, so as a machine vision guide for applications engineers and developers. And I'll explain later why I keep using the term machine vision and not computer vision. Bit of a sticking point with me, but the terms don't really matter. But I will talk about that. That'll be its own video for people who are interested. Okay, and I'm going to talk about marketing. And again, I apologize. I'm looking at the script because I got to read this off script. But I'm going to talk about marketing and research. Actually, can you even tell where I'm looking? I get that question all the time. Actually, I don't get it so much anymore because one eye's looking to here and our little friend over here is looking somewhere else. Okay, anyways, I'm going to talk about marketing and research, sales, business models, all that stuff within the context of my company and my app. So you can read about all this stuff by authors who focus on this. I'm going to mention the books that I think are really great in time. Like, I think you should have one good book per subject. There should be one good book on marketing. There should be one good book on advertising. It's Ogilvy on advertising. There is one book about pitching, which is Pitch Anything by Oren Klaff. I'll suggest that you visit Pitch Club, run by Martin Barnes and crew. All these sorts of things. I'm going to tell you that it's the context. It's tying it together. It's all that stuff to really understand how all these pieces work. Okay, so and it's all relevant to making assistive technology. At least this is how it's been relevant to me, which I'll now describe. I'm going to tell you now the history briefly of the Ecobatics app. And so again, I have to, because there are a lot of dates I'm mentioning. I have dates and I have extensive documentation, as my friend Kate would tell you. Oh boy, can I write a lot fast. And to quote someone I'll have to look up later, maybe it was Mark Twain. I think it might have actually been a French author. I didn't have, this letter is long because I didn't have enough time to write a short letter. So the idea being that if you take time to edit and do things in more than one take, you can make it tight and compact and people actually follow. And thank you so much for actually listening this far already. I bet we're down to 10%, but let's go ahead and get into this story. So before 2019, I started hanging out with blind folks here in my local area. I was asking questions, and I even led a tour of blind folks through a library here where I live in Boston. A tour of a library with print books. And this is an old library called the Boston Athenaeum with complicated layout, because my interest at the time was primarily indoor navigation and all the pieces that would need to come together to provide good indoor navigation and accessibility for a lot of things. Imagine someone who's blind walking into a library, being able to pick books off the shelf that were never accessible and that to this day do not have digital versions. Boston Athenaeum is one of the oldest libraries in this country. It's not saying something for the world, but it's one of the oldest libraries in this country. It's huge. It has a lot of volumes, many of which never been digital. Imagine if a blind person could go in there, navigate to what they want on their own, find a book, pick up a book, take it to a table, open it, and read it. So I led a tour of the Boston Athenaeum before 2019. Late 2019, I left my previous company to found a startup called Ecobatics. Thanks to Kate for suggesting the name. And thanks also to someone else who may not want to be mentioned, so I'm not going to mention the other person, but this other person was also part of the discussion of the name and some early stuff. So thanks to the two people who were part of that discussion. One of them, hi, Kate. Now, officially, Ecobatics was founded, I specifically asked for this, on 2020-02-02. sorry. So 2020, like vision, and it's a palindromic date, 2020-0202. It's also Groundhog Day in the US, February 2nd. So I was already working in December, but I wanted the company, it was an LLC, Echobatics LLC, to be officially founded on February 2nd, 2020. Now, 2020, you're going to start to remember some things that maybe are a little unpleasant. But okay, so in March 2020, here's where we go. The pandemic hit, the COVID pandemic. Lockdowns were in place. And that changed life for everyone. I was, in fact, at the CSUN conference, which is a conference that's held every year in California. And it's all about assistive technology, accessibility and such. Met a lot of great people. I was there, and the conference attendance was low. And I met a lot of great people, and really enjoyed that trip a lot, despite the fact that COVID was starting to spread. And we're starting to hear stories. I got home the day before the airports closed. Some people weren't so lucky getting home so easily. Anyways, so that was March 2020. And for a month or two, you're figuring out what? Well, tried some things, pitched some ideas here at a local, that Mass Challenge, local accelerator. But in summer 2020, I realized we had to pivot away from prototypes for indoor navigation. Done some work, talked about it with the team and so on, and I realized like this wasn't going to work because buildings are closed. Can't go and test this in buildings. Everything was closed. And so we started working on something called wearable braille typing, and I write about this in a Medium post, which I'll try to remember. I'm going to write about it or mention it more length, but I wrote a Medium post about that. And wearable braille typing is, and this is a story that gets repeated, was something that I thought would be really cool. I created a prototype. I showed it to some people. I believe it was at the National Braille Press. Someone mentioned to me, hey, there was this guy who won an award a few years ago for something like this, Josh Mealy. Josh, if you're watching this, hello. And so I wrote up that whole history. So as I'll explain in the future, when you decide to develop something, as your first step, I recommend just go ahead and start working. Okay, it is completely okay if you develop something that is similar to something someone developed before. Throughout the history of science, engineering, mathematics, you'll see this again and again and again. People develop things independently, maybe staggered in time. They don't know about each other. And then what you should do, and which I've done in Medium because Josh Mealy is a friend of a friend of two friends, actually, and I respect his work. And I looked at it, I was like, well, that's really cool. He'd actually solved all these problems. Josh is blind himself, and he developed this wearable braille system called WearBraille. Anyways, I'm going to talk more about that in the future, but I just want to mention that, hey, I already developed a prototype, then found out about Josh's work in earlier years. And there was a YouTube video. Once I knew to look for it, it's like, there it was. So anyway, so we tested our prototype, which was one or two-handed wearable braille typing with off-the-shelf components. So it's something that could have been productizable, but for a variety of reasons, including the fact that there were not yet vaccines, we could not test in person. So this is part of the story, but you got to think about these things when you're developing assistive technology, you're a business, all sorts of things come into play. And even though we had made some progress and we had a proof of concept, it was clunky and it was not robust. It was a proof of concept. There's another thing I'm going to talk about later, the difference between a proof of concept, prototype, it's a little more public, and a beta and release and all that kind of thing. But it demonstrated the principle. That wearable braille typing could be productized and could be made available to a lot of people who know braille or want to learn braille. Anyways, so decided to set that aside because it didn't look like we were going to be able to test in person, and you need to test accessibility tech in person with the people who would use it, and you need to get direct feedback. So here's a short break. I got to take a drink of water. I'm back. Okay, so people who can't see what I was doing, I was making kind of a stupid gesture because there's like a 5-second break there while I had some water. Okay, so we had to, because it didn't look like any of the prototypes I developed, and I have hardware, this kind and that kind. And again, so I've been working, I think I mentioned it, I've been working in machine vision image processing since 1995. I collect hardware, I write algorithms, all these kinds of things off and on. And so over time, I've collected a lot of stuff. And for acrobatics development, for different prototypes, I was trying different things. That's what you do in R&D. You buy something, you try it, and most of the time, you find out this isn't gonna fly. This isn't gonna work. So I got a lot of hardware sitting in boxes in the storage. But it looked like face-to-face testing, which is necessary, like that couldn't happen. We didn't have vaccines yet. And even if we did, not everyone who was partially vaccinated necessarily wanted to meet in person. So did more surveys, looked at our past survey results, and had team discussions on remote calls and Zoom, which is how I'm recording this. And that led to the decision to focus on touch screen accessibility. So if you imagine a touch screen or a flat control panel, right? Something like a restaurant touchscreen menu, or a microwave, or nowadays even washers and dryers will have touch screens, right? To someone who is, we'll first talk about someone who is totally blind, these will feel like featureless glass panels, okay? And some of them, especially capacitive interfaces, you have to target, you have to hold your hand out and push. You have to know exactly where you're going to touch before you touch it, because if you get your finger even closer, you'll trigger it. Okay. So for other techniques, which I'll talk about in the future, and in a video about the different kinds of touch screens and flat control panels and physical interfaces that we want people who are blind and visually impaired to interact with, because we cannot wait for all of these to be replaced in the distant future by devices that are accessible. So there's plenty of work going on to ensure that happens, but we want to make these devices that are probably going to be around for years, if not decades longer. Some of these things just keep going and going. Appliances, touchscreens, they don't necessarily get replaced every year. And when they do get replaced, they still may not have good accessibility features. And boy, we're going to have a long discussion about what accessibility really means. Accessibility. Usability is also different, and that's really important, and why a lot of this development happened. So anyways, so I want to focus on touchscreen accessibility. In particular, the plan was, and is and remains, to read text at the end of someone's finger, right? Someone has a finger out, just like perhaps you, using a touchscreen. If you're sighted and you can see a button on the touchscreen, you reach out, you touch it, right? Something happens. If you're going to cook something, you reach out and you touch a button on the microwave, the oven, whatever, coffee maker. If you're sighted, you quickly scan the entire thing. Your brain recognizes a particular thing. You target it with your hand. That is a sensory motor loop that requires coordination. You touch it, you press the button, you confirm the feedback that is displayed, and you keep going. And it is a lot of steps that you don't think about. You just beep, 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 beep. If you're sighted, if you're blind or visually impaired, these things are completely inaccessible, with a few exceptions we'll talk about later. And those things, even the exceptions, are maybe accessible, but they're problematic for other reasons. So anyways, plan was to read text at the end of someone's finger. That would make it possible for a person who can't see or read a flat touchscreen. That could include people with really severe dyslexia. That would allow them to interact with the buttons on whatever this device is, just flat, and then there are buttons. So there's a long list of future features. Recall just a moment ago, I was talking about all these different steps that a person who is sighted and who has sufficient mobility does. The sensory motor loop, moving a finger, watching. Even with my impaired depth perception, I can tell what my finger is targeting. Sometimes I get it wrong, frankly, because my impaired depth perception, but we'll come back to that. So long list of future features, but the starting point was just that: read text at the end of your finger. If you can do that, and if you can have people test that key idea, which could be implemented any number of ways on different platforms, then you've got to start. You can say, hey, does this actually work? You've got to confirm No matter how cool you think your idea is, you've got to confirm from real people, is this what you want? Or more specifically, this is not a yes or no. Is this headed in the right direction? Or, as a friend would put it, who again may not want to be mentioned by name, what, if anything, is preventing you from spending money on this? Or it could be attention, time, whatever. What's preventing you from sort of, let's call it, buying into this thing? It could be really simple. A lot of prototypes, a lot of services that we use, that we all use, started as simple prototypes that were either released in beta, which we're going to talk about, or like a really simple public release that they got out the instant it sort of started working, getting feedback. And people might say, oh, this is terrible. But then you get feedback and you figure out, and this has become a popular way of development. It's coming off the book by Eric Ries called The Lean Startup, which is based in part on a previous book, which to those of us in R&D, none of the ideas are new at all. These are great books. The Lean Startup is a really good summary of this for a lot of people, and there's a reason people use this book. It's a great reference. However, this is the way development has worked for a long, long time, if you've been in it deep. So anyways, so we're still in the fall of 2020. Now, so we make this decision. I buy a MacBook right here. I start learning the Swift programming language. So again, I've been programming professionally since 1995. I've been doing image processing since then. And even if you go back off and on, I go back to BASIC on the Apple IIe in the early 80s. That was the first time I actually did programming. But I really got into professionally starting 1995 after I left school and started work. So anyways, so all these things are underway. I'm going to now follow through on this decision. Read text at the end of your finger in some prototype. And then my colleague, Syed, after much searching, finds something I hadn't found, which was a paper about touchscreen accessibility developed by a team at Carnegie Mellon University led by Anhang Guo. So we talked to Dr. Guo, who's a great guy, and he's done a lot of good work in assistive technology. I have a lot of respect for him. I maybe we'll have an opportunity to work together in the future. I don't know. He works in academia, I work in industry, but really cool work. And he, to my knowledge, is the academic who has done the best work, the longest in academia on touchscreen accessibility. And he has an app out too, by the way. It's free. It's technically, you could say, oh, it competes with my app. Okay. And our apps work differently. So again, you develop something separately. You may have different goals, and you turn up solving the problem slightly differently. We each know, and we can each figure out how the other person's app works. They're like, okay, but Dr. Guo is going in his direction, I'm going in my direction. And I hope he doesn't mind that I mentioned him. But again, he has a long history of academic work in this field. He's done really great work. I did not ask for his permission to use his name, but his papers are public, and you really should read them. He's done some really cool work. VizLens, VizLens, it's the name of the app, if I remember correctly. And if it's incorrect, I will make a correction in the description below. Okay, so again, we found out what Dr. Guo and his team had done using the technology that was available at the time they were developing it and testing it. And so we understood what they had done. And I talked to Dr. Guo about this and said, oh, and I knew I wanted to take a different approach. And you're going to hear me say that a lot in future videos over and over again. I want to take a different approach. I decided on a different approach, and I'll explain exactly why. I'm not doing it to be contrary or to say me. No, it has to do with the goals that I have. So anyways, so for reasons I'll describe later, iOS, Apple's mobile operating system, iPhone, was the choice for the first deployment for what we were developing. So bought a MacBook late 2020. I learned Swift programming language. And then as I was also doing prototyping that didn't require much programming. And I wrote a Medium post called Prototyping Accessible Apps with ProtoPie. I'll put the link below. Maybe not immediately, but I'll get to it. And that's one of my least read posts. And that's saying something, because most of my posts have been read by very few people. But to date, that is possibly the most important post I've ever read. And I'll explain why later. because that comes later. So in December 2020, and in 2 weeks after I decided, okay, I've learned enough Swift to start going, I created the touchscreen accessibility prototype, which I called Point and Speak. So the idea is you point at the screen and the app speaks. Okay, so it's interaction. You were working with the phone. This is my newer phone, not the older phone I originally had. So you're going to point the phone, you're going to point your finger and your assistive tech. To me, and this is just a tool. Okay, it just happened to be a platform to develop on. And it speaks. So all the technologies necessarily were finally becoming available. Most of these technologies I had seen working really well earlier because of my career in machine vision, which I'll come back to. So anyway, so I decided to use Apple libraries and sample code. And thanks to the people who made that. But since I knew what I wanted to build, we'd made the decision. Again, you decide what people, after you found out what people actually need, you work that direction. What do people actually want? That's marketing, surveys and stuff. What do people want? What can we build? What should the first version be? What could we deploy it on and why? You got to look at statistics and stuff. And so I could have built this from scratch on any number of platforms, but we chose, so it could have gone on Android and so on, but iOS was the right choice for early development, specifically because of our users, blind people in the US, for the first version. Okay, so December 2020, I had a working prototype, and while I was doing this, I was writing Medium posts about some of the, and you know, in the coming years, I would write Medium posts about some of the code that I was writing to use, you know, taking math from somewhere and implementing it in the Swift programming language. So maybe it's code that I'd read somewhere else, maybe it was from a book, maybe it was something I came up with myself because I just wanted things to be easier for me to develop. And so I wrote Medium posts about that on the side. And I considered, you know, kind of give that away. And so those are just little focus topics. It's like, here's how to convert an image from this format to that format. And I recommend you do the same. It's like, while you're working, if you can make something public, and if you're okay with making it public, go ahead, write about what you're doing. You share it with other people, because you're going to be using open source libraries. You know, granted, if you're developing for an mobile system, there's a good chance you're paying for a license, in which case you've paid for access to libraries that do some of the things you want, but you're probably going to be using open source libraries and reading books and all this kind of stuff. And, you know, give credit where credit is due. Acknowledge people. Do not fail to give credit. We'll get back to that later. So anyways, in February of 2021, so just a year after the company was founded, and after tried all kinds of prototypes, the Point and Speak beta was accepted into test flight, which is Apple's beta program. So it is not public at like the App Store. Okay, so I posted a 9-minute video on YouTube explaining to my team and to testers how to use the app. And the video was on YouTube, but unlisted. And unlisted means people can't search for it and find it. You need this specific link with a bunch of alphanumeric garbage characters at the end of the link, which people aren't going to guess, right? So, and for good reason, this is a beta. This was for the team. This was for test flight people to review so they could see how the app was supposed to work. And especially for testers, I wanted them to understand it. And keep in mind, again, so the testers are people who are blind and visually impaired. And at the time, most of them were people who read Braille. So if you watch the video, which I'll, again, post the link to the beta videos, you'll see that the initial tests start with a Braille representation of the test target, so that someone could read the Braille representation and understand what was on the test target. However, the test target was a flat piece of paper printed to sort of simulate what it would be like to move your finger over a control panel. So it's just a numeric control panel. It sort of simulates a microwave. And what it would be like for this interaction. Again, the interaction is important. How fast can it be? Does it work? Someone's holding the camera, and this is super important. You're not holding the camera still. It's moving, or your muscles are twitching. No one holds a camera perfectly still. If you see a video with a camera that's perfectly still, that is mounted. That is not a demonstration. That's a marketing video. So I wanted to show from the very first version, I knew it was important. It's important to prove, if you will, that this could work. Someone's holding a phone in one hand and they're not holding it straight and they're blind. So pointing it's also difficult. And they're using their other hand. This is not a super net here. I'm having trouble even doing it. This is not, that's not a particularly natural thing. You've got to train people to do that. And hopefully they get used to it quickly enough. So anyways, that video and other videos were shared with these groups that I mentioned. Test Flight, the Acrobatics team, also included family and close friends, and our testers. So again, these are unpublished videos. So no one's gonna search it. So maybe why some people hadn't heard of this. Because it seemed to make sense at the time. It was like the earliest beta was a demonstration of the interaction and included code that I'm still using now. But anyways, for most of the beta, access to point and speak was by email invite only. At the very, very end of the beta period, I did make it public, but that was really short. So it was invite access only. So now in 2021, I keep making new versions of the point and speak beta, new videos to explain what each version is. Those videos, again, are now public, and I'll post the link in the description section below. Now, I'll also mention that 2 videos for 2 versions of the app, the beta app, are not there because they show some technology, I keep calling it technology, they show some stuff, algorithms and things that aren't in the app yet. So I put them in for testing, got the results I needed, took them back out. And I'm not even explaining what they're for. So anyways, keep making these new things. Now, around this time, 2021, earlier, an engineer from Snap, the company that makes Snapchat, contacted me about my Medium post about the prototyping tool ProtoPie, which is very cool, by the way. I selected it because ProtoPie gives you access to the camera sensors, like which way is someone pointing the camera. I'm not sure if the Snap engineer wants to be mentioned by name, but once again, I will express huge thanks for the suggestion to apply for the Ghost Fellowship program with Snap. So summer 2021 now, with lots of work on the part of my colleague Chuck. And with many thanks to Martin Barnes and all the folks in Pitch Club, I get ready and I pitch a Ghost Fellowship project to Snap to determine product market fit of touchscreen accessibility on smart glasses. These are not smart glasses. In short, it's point and speak, but hands-free on smart glasses that weren't publicly available. But I wanted to know, and we wanted to find out. I was like, hey, this is part of the plan, by the way, to deploy this on smart glasses. And now if anyone's developing smart glasses, you go off and run it. Oh, geez, please give me credit. I'll talk about that more later. I'll do that later. Anyways, so the idea, product market fit, people have talked for years and written about, oh, if only you can have smart glasses. I still don't think it's the best solution, by the way, but smart glasses are the thing that's coming. Okay. It's one thing to say that, and it's one thing to conduct these really limited tests with a limited number of people on prototype hardware. It's an entirely different thing to be able to test with users using hardware that a large company has developed that has great technology. Snap is not one of the top few social media sites, but if you ever look at the statistics and realize how many people use Snapchat, it will help explain why they have such cool technology. And if you're in image processing, machine vision, computer vision, and you've not used Lens Studio to create Snap lenses, you need to check it out. It is nice. Wow. So many cool features. I'll, again, come back to that later because I really, really like their technology. Obviously, I'm an enthusiast about these things. So anyways, pitch the project. And in short, again, it's point and speak on smart glasses, but hands-free. And it's determining product market fit. Sunglasses, some smart glasses aren't available publicly. So people can't buy them. We're going to try to find out. Oh, and then we got the grant, which is great. So in 2022, we're working on point and speak. I'm doing point and speak work for iOS on the side. We've got the grant from Snapchat. It's a lot of work. I'm just going to say it, I start to get really tired a lot of the time. Got an employee, interns, trying to coordinate meetings. Over time, I've got to start limiting the number of team meetings. It's just getting to be a lot. We're going to talk about all that sort of overload in the future. So I had to make certain decisions. There are things that we wanted to do, we really couldn't. And there's a particular time when Snap really stepped in and helped us a lot. Doing things that under other circumstances, I would have wanted that we had done ourselves with less help from them. But I really appreciate their help in this one instance, which I'll talk about another time. But it was great. And again, great people to work with. Yeah. Anyways, so again, you can see the Point and Speak beta playlist for 2 videos in which acrobatic stuff appears during public Snap conferences. Okay. And thanks again to all the people at Snap for that really cool opportunity. It's amazing technology. And more thanks to come in future videos. And I'm not calling you out by name because maybe you don't want to be, but just had a really good time working with them. Okay, so again, I mentioned trying to do all this work was a lot. So, but at the end of 2022, my colleague Mia and I finally wrapped work on the Snap project. And so that was testing, data, presenting a report. And we had learned so much, and I'll talk later about what we learned. And in particular, I found a new way to sort of describe the goals of touchscreen accessibility and accessibility and beyond in ways that I hadn't heard described before. So it was the way I'd been thinking for a while, but found a new way to really tie it together. And it was because of the work on the Snap project. So to me, that was really important. That was the end of 2022. So in early 2023, and we're talking really late December, early January, after the holidays, I decided to create one more beta for Point and Speak. And this wasn't necessarily a popular decision with the team, but I said, I just want to squeeze this one more feature in before we release publicly, because I still had to go through, I was still going to go through the process. We wanted to release it. We'd already decided to release it as a subscription app, free trial subscription. That was going to take some time. I was pushing that off. So with Point and Speak beta, early 2023, I start making another feature. So on Global Accessibility Awareness Day in May 2023, someone from another small company that I know sent me an email with a link to a press release from Apple. In the press release, Apple announces an upcoming Point and Speak feature for accessibility. Point your finger, and it reads something at the end of your finger. Okay, so that was a surprise to me, and I still don't know what happened. I have a guess. Well, anyways, I moved on. So late May 2023, and in a bit of a rush, I changed the name of the Point and Speak beta. That was going to be the app name, Point and Speak. I changed it on the advice of the people you ask advice from in these matters. I changed the name of the Point and Speak beta to Acrobatics. I just want to get it out. Okay, so it's the same name as the company. Thought, oh, that might actually, that might be all right. The name of my company and the name of the app are the same thing. And the App Store accepts the Acrobatics app for public release. Again, this is a version 1, whatever the actual version is called, and 1.0. And, again, it's to get feedback now from people who can find it in the App Store. That's the idea of an early release. That's why you do it, is you need feedback. So if there are people who've tried it, and this can be hard with assistive tech in particular, for reasons I'll describe later, it's hard to get feedback on this kind of app from people you may never have met, especially when it's anonymous. I'm not collecting people's email addresses. Maybe I should, but I really want to respect people's privacy. Okay. Anyways, so July 2023, I file a provisional patent for tech to be released in the future, some of it. Some of it I just don't even include in the provisional patent at all. So that's July 2023, not quite a year ago. Late 2023, I developed more features for the Acrobatics app. I'll talk about those in the future videos. And now that brings us to 2024. So there are new versions of the Acrobatics app, and they've included things like improved feature to read text at the end of your finger. I made a few improvements there, but I really wanted to put more effort elsewhere for a variety of reasons. Improved ability to read labels on objects. You hold something in your hand and you read the label, but you don't want to read other stuff. Interesting. That's the read mode. And then there is a barcode mode to read UPC symbols on grocery items like cans of soup, boxes of frozen dinners, and other items that are difficult for blind people to identify and distinguish. Like you have 4 cans of soup, they're different kinds of soup. How does a blind person identify them? Well, there are ways to do it. They can use Braille labels. They can have a sighted person identify them. On and on and on. These are all take extra time and inconvenient. What if you could just pick something up, beep, and read it right away? There are apps that do that, but what's different about the Echobatics app is all of those features work without a Wi-Fi or cell connection. You just pick something up, beep, right away, because everything's running on the phone. Key thing, again, I'll talk about that later. That was one of these decisions, at least for the work that we wanted to do for this first product, and that I really generally want to do. I want people using older technology, which most people have, who may not have a good Wi-Fi or cell connection. I'll explain why that's more the case for people who are blind and visually impaired. And other reasons to have this feature that other apps have. The one in the Echobatics app works differently. So anyways, I used to work for a company that invented a number of barcodes. So creating a UPC reading feature was kind of like coming home. Anyways, that's the start. I've taken you from before 2019 to 2024. That is the structure. Maybe in another video, I'll present it much more concisely, but I want to get this out. And again, I want this to be more of like, this is how I monologue, by the way. Anyone who knows me, this is how I talk. This was done in one take. I'm reading from a script, but I wrote the script in, 10, 15 minutes, believe it or not. I type kind of fast. And obviously I do things that are, you wouldn't normally put in a video if you wanted to be slick. So anyways, again, in upcoming videos, I'm going to dig into the pieces of tech, perhaps more concisely, the history of that tech, which is important to know when you're trying to go after new products, you want to develop something new, and also how, as a visually impaired person, an engineer, an inventor, and an entrepreneur, how I approach development. Because I hope these videos will be useful to you. And thanks so much for watching this whole long thing. Obviously, if I'd spent 3 days writing scripts and doing it, I could edit it down. But here we are. I'm already planning to make the next video. I'll talk to you again soon. Thanks.